All right, so my presentation, everybody can still hear me okay? Presentation's entitled Tandem Exit Techniques. The moral of the story is that tandem skydives start with tandem exits. It's a simple concept, but it's one I need you guys to understand. The tandem exit, that is the skill set for which you are being paid for. Once the drogue is out, our job is basically done. Short of stability and altitude awareness, all the hard work is basically done until it's time to deploy. Would you guys agree? Now, once we deploy a parachute, all bets are off. Our packers might be angry with us. The owner might be skimping on maintenance. We don't have line sets that are in trim. Who knows what's going to happen when that parachute opens? We can't control that. But up until that point, we can control everything in terms of reduction of emergency procedures. If we have good, positive, solid, stable exits, which we're capable of doing on every exit, we can eliminate upwards of 95% of the possible emergency scenarios that are going to present themselves to us. If you look at the UPT emergency procedure tree, if you look at the BPA emergency procedure tree, all of these possible negative emergency scenarios all have to do with exiting the aircraft, the time before the drogue is set. Through setting the drogue, the last one being potentially a drogue entanglement. And once we get past that and we're clearly under a drogue and clean under a drogue, our job is done until pull time. Remain stable, check our altitude, and then deploy our parachute. So, by focusing on our exits and fixing our exits, we can remove 95% of the emergency scenarios that we're going to potentially see. Who wouldn't want to do that? You're going to get paid the same whether you work hard or have an easy job, right? Whether you make it harder for yourself or do all the right things. So let's focus on making it easier on ourselves and removing the possibility of these emergency scenarios occurring. So let's talk about some facts about poor exits. Poor exits are caused by bad body position in the door. That bad body position could be the student's body position, the instructor's body position, or more often than not, it's a combination of both. Fear plays a major role in tandem exits breaking down. I showed you the side spin. That's one of a number of possible scenarios that can occur on exit that have tandem instructors afraid. They're afraid of their own ability to fly their own body. Am I sitting in a room full of experienced skydivers? Yep. Are you guys capable of exiting an aircraft stable on your own as a solo skydiver? Then you are capable of exiting stable with someone attached to you. Unfortunately, we tend to forget that. We have a couple of close calls, a couple of unstable exits, and we start to get nervous, whatever the reason. And fear tends to take away all the fundamental things that we learned and replace it with bad behaviors, that new normal, putting our hand on the drogue before we even leave the aircraft because we're afraid of tandem free fall. Now, what is tandem free fall? Somebody tell me. We've got exit, tandem drogue fall. What happens between exit and drogue fall? Free fall. It's the best part of our job, at least it should be. It's the 3 to 8 seconds between exit and setting the drogue where we've actually used our own skill set. We showed the world how good we are. We exited stable, we flew our body. No matter what our student's doing, we're capable of maintaining a stable body position. We set the drogue, and at that point, we're now under drogue fall, and our exit is over. Unfortunately, we have a number of instructors around the world that are afraid of this 3 to 8 seconds, this tandem free fall. So I want you guys to ask yourself, self-evaluation, how do I feel about tandem free fall? Am I comfortable and am I confident with exiting an aircraft without using the drogue to get stable? Can I exit an aircraft and fly my own body? And the answer should be what? Yes. And if the answer is no, what do? We fix it. We find the people and the tools to build that confidence back. We need to remove the fear. There's also a lack of knowledge, exit fundamentals. That could be simply because we're jumping out of different aircraft that we're not familiar with, and every aircraft has a subtly different exit technique. But for the most part, we simply forget the exit fundamentals, student body position, instructor body position, and orientation to the relative wind, because we don't go back and revisit the information. Laziness, repetition. How many people are either a tandem instructor that does 500 tandems a year? Wait, this is the UK. 50 tandems a year? When I worked in New Zealand, I did 700 tandem jumps in 4 months. Okay, I forgot the fundamentals of exits because I was doing so many tandem jumps, I kind of forgot the basics of what I learned. That can happen if you have too much experience or even not enough experience in currency. Relative wind presentation. The relative wind will always be coming from the same direction, the line of flight. But for some reason, tandem instructors choose to make their jobs harder by exiting perpendicular to the relative wind. We're going to address hand cams. Hand cams have effectively destroyed our tandem exit ability. Anybody here jump a hand cam? Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. No, actually, the Australians have invented it. At least 4 different people have invented hand cam in Australia. At least I've met 4 people that have said that they invented it. And the Australians have actually done a really good job of creating programs and training syllabus for that. But overall, globally, hand cam is destroying our exit ability. And then lastly, we'll talk about jumpsuit selection. These are all the facts about our bad exits. So body position, like we saw, the student was de-arched. In most of the bad exits we see, we have a de-arched student. Students' legs tend to be out in front. Their arms tend to be crisscrossed across their chest. A critical one, the head is forward looking down. We go where we look. If we do not want to flip over, we want to prevent our student from looking down. We want to reposition their head looking up, because if their head's looking up, where are they going to go? They're going to go head high into the relative wind, which is where we want them. And their spine should be straight, preferably curved back, but the majority of what we're fighting is the forward curve, the D-arch. So a straight spine or a curved spine backwards on the student would be the corrected body position. Now, this next slide I'm going to leave up for a moment, let you just take a look at it. Any motorcycle riders here? Okay. You guys are already using this process subconsciously. You're probably not even aware of it. If you're riding your motorcycle down the right side of the road, sorry, we're in the UK. If you're riding the motorcycle down the left side of the road, and you see an intersection coming up a couple miles ahead, and you see a car approaching that intersection, we don't ride motorcycles looking directly in front of us. That would be dangerous. We ride motorcycles looking ahead of us, looking for the dangers that are going to be approaching. We see a car approaching an intersection, and on a subconscious level, what we do is we realize that if that car does not do what it's supposed to do, and it runs the light or the stop sign, we're going to end up on a direct collision course with that car. Bad for us, not so bad for them. They have a car wrapped around them, but it's going to be really bad for us on the motorcycle. So we scan the horizon, we interpret the data we see, the car approaching the intersection. We predict they are going to do something wrong, and it is not what we want to see in front of us, that they're going to blow the stop sign. We determine the best course of action is to change lanes and get out of that path, and then we do it. So that all happens in a split second. You're riding your motorcycle at 60, 70 miles an hour, you see the car coming, and before you're even consciously aware of it, you've changed lanes because you do it over and over and over again. Well, this same concept can be applied to tandem exits, and it should be applied to tandem exits. It's a process that can take anywhere from 1 to 3 seconds with practice. And is 1 to 3 seconds too much time to spend in the door of an airplane? Especially when you have a 6 to 8 second separation. You typically get to the door early and have to wait, right, for the person and the time to pass by. So this process of scanning, interpreting, predicting, determining, and executing should be used for your student body position, your instructor body position, and the relative wind. Things we talked about, those breakdowns in that side spin. If that instructor had been trained to scan the body position of his student, could he have corrected it in the door? Absolutely. If he had scanned his own body position and done the same process and saw that he was diving over the top of his student rather than exiting on level with his student, could he have corrected that in the door? 100%. And lastly, could he have also scanned his relative wind orientation and very quickly and simply rotated his body and exited into the relative wind? This process, all 3 different scenarios, student body, instructor body, and my orientation to the relative wind, it should be done on every tandem exit. And it won't take long to do. The more you do it, the better you get, the more efficient you are. In the beginning, it might take 3 to 5 seconds to scan it and correct it. And you'll find in time, as you're getting better at it, you'll start to do it as you're moving into the door. You'll start correcting the body position of the student and of yourself before you reach the door. And you'll be so aware of the relative wind, you won't even allow yourself to put yourself in the door perpendicular to the relative wind. If you use this principle on every tandem exit, you will reduce 95+% of the exit problems that you will have as a tandem instructor, because you will have fixed all the fundamental flaws before exiting the aircraft that cause bad exits. Sound good? Is that something we can all incorporate in what we do? Okay. All right, so we'll address fear again. We have The fear of the side spin. Hopefully I've evidenced to you guys, I'm kind of trapped back here. Hopefully we've evidenced to you guys that the side spin's nothing to be afraid of. We have a video, the side spin phenomenon video, that shows the principles of what causes it, how to fix it, and how to correct it if we can't fix it, and how to get out of it. We have a fear of tandem free fall. I addressed that earlier, the fear of that 3 to 8 seconds where we're exiting the aircraft and skydiving. That is a fundamental skydiver ability. That should be the core strength of your tandem skydiving, is your ability to exit stable, and that period between exit and setting the drogue. But what happens is we forget the basic fundamental foundations that we are trained on, and then our tandem exits become harder because we're not using those principles anymore. We're trying to just make it up as we go. We're dealing with it outside of the door. The more unstable exits you have, the lower your confidence level is going to go. The lower your confidence level goes, the higher your fear level is going to rise. So we just have to take a moment of pause when we find ourselves in these scenarios, ask ourselves what's causing it, and most importantly, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's so important, fix the problems. So many incidents and accidents, we go back and see that whether it's exit or landing, the instructor had the same negative behaviors time and time again, and eventually resulted in an accident. And we always ask the question, why didn't you fix it beforehand? And the reason they didn't fix it is no one thought to look for it. Most importantly, the instructor themselves. There are some instructors out there that have a fear of tandem skydiving. Believe it or not, tandem pays pretty well. As far as in our sport, it's probably the best paying job we have in the industry. So there are skydivers that actually don't like tandem skydiving, but they do it because they need to make a living. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a philosopher, so I won't tell you whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But if you're afraid of the very job you have, you're probably going to make bad decisions in that job. So what's the result of all this fear? The result of all this fear is leaving aircraft with our hands on the drogue. I would reference this photo, and I would call it any given Saturday, because this could be at your drop zone, this could be at my drop zone, it could be at any drop zone on any busy Saturday. Here's an instructor still attached to the airplane, still have their feet on the aircraft, and his hand is on the drogue. Why is his hand on the drogue? He's got the fear. We don't know exactly which one, but he is absolutely suffering from the fear. And his thought process is, if I set the drogue out the door, which he does, I can't get in a side spin. I can't get unstable. I can't throw the drogue around my legs. Sorry. But where should his right arm be? His right arm should be up, catching air, up there with his left arm. So the very act that he is doing to prevent instability is what? It's creating instability. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, this is in the United States, but I got to be fair and honest with you. It's not just a U.S. problem. It's not just a U.S. epidemic. Here we are in Europe, out of a PAC 750. Hand on the drogue. Instructor's body position. What's wrong with it? De-arched. Student's body position is, what's wrong with it? It's de-arched. Is he skydiving? This is not even a tandem instructor because there is no tandem skydiving going on. This is push ourselves off the door of an aircraft and put a drogue out as soon as we leave the aircraft. This individual forgot what it meant to be a tandem instructor, forgot what it meant to fly tandem free fall. And to be fair, this drop zone, some of you might recognize the color scheme. I won't tell you who it is, but the examiner there is fantastic. He's been doing tandem since 1983. He's been an examiner since 1987. He's trained a lot of quality instructors, including this one. And when this guy was trained, he was originally trained to do this, leave an aircraft stable and neutral. But this became his new normal on exit, and guess who has problems with their exits? And he doesn't understand why. When you stop and take a moment of pause and look at this, and if you went and searched his name on the Drop Zone YouTube channel, you would see this exit over and over and over again. And what's going to happen? Eventually, there's going to be a drogue entanglement. Eventually, an arm or leg will get wrapped up in a drogue, and it will be an accident. And it will only go to reaffirm his fear of tandem instruction, being a tandem instructor, because he's woefully unaware of the very fundamental facts and fundamental procedures that a tandem instructor is required to perform on each and every jump. Would this exit pass a tandem instructor course? Not at all. Fail, done, repeat, try again. This would not be an acceptable form of exit in a course, yet once the course is over, this is his day-to-day, his new normal, how he exits aircraft. All right, so an exit on a tandem skydive is no different than an exit for an AFF student. Any guys AFF instructors in here? The setup, the launch, and the flyaway. The setup, shaking the door, okay, ready to go. We launch off the aircraft, and then we charge our brand new students with only one skydive. What are they supposed to do? Fly away from the aircraft. Every skydiver should do that, whether you're a student, whether you're a sport jumper, or whether you're a tandem instructor. You should be setting up on the door, launching, clearing the aircraft into the relative wind, flying away, and the flyaway is the right arm here, not here. And when you put it all together, you get something really nice. Okay? This is a coworker of mine in Florida. He's about 6'3". He's a really tall guy trying to get out of a really short door frame of a PAC 750. Now, can you see the orientation of the relative wind in his face and in his hair, right? He's in the relative wind. Where is his right arm? It is up, it is catching air. It is not on the drogue. Look at his student body position. His body position. And he continues to skydive. Okay? He's left the aircraft. He is showing the world right here that he knows how to skydive. Now granted, he's got long arms and long legs, so it's probably easier for him than most of us, but it doesn't matter if you're 7 feet tall or 5 feet tall. The same principle should apply on every tandem exit. We exit into the relative wind with a corrected student body position and a corrected instructor body position with our arms up high, catching air, flying our body. Tell you one thing he has that these guys don't have is confidence. And I guarantee you, if you showed this exit to every one of our tandem examiners in the world, they would pass this. If this was a student jump, they would pass this as an exit from a course. This met and exceeded all of the course requirements for a stable exit. He's continuing after 4,000 tandem jumps to do the very thing he was trained in his class. All right, next is the relative wind. We talked about that a lot already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But different aircraft make it easier or harder to enter the relative wind. Speaker. Do we all know where the relative wind is? Okay. We all know that most side door aircraft, we have to actually rotate our body into the relative wind, whether we're hopping off the floor of a caravan and turning 90 degrees, or whether it's a large aircraft like a Twin Otter where we can actually turn our bodies inside the plane. Wait, this is the UK. You guys have a lot of 182s, right? There's not a lot of Twin Otters here. But even a 182, it's a little harder to get out onto the step, but are you guys capable of exiting into the relative wind on a 182? Right, so there's really no reason not to, other than I'm tired, I'm lazy, I'm bored, I'll deal with it after I get out of the aircraft. My passenger's not helping me, I'm just gonna get them out the door and we're just gonna deal with it later. If we can remove that and focus on the relative wind each and every jump, the relative wind is our partner out there. The student's trying to do everything they can to make our exit harder and dangerous. The relative wind is there to offset that. The relative wind is there saying, hey, I'm your friend. If you turn to me, I'll turn to you and we'll work together to get you out stable. But if you ignore me and you try to dive away from me, I'm going to make your job harder. So think about the relative wind as your partner out there. You're working together in concert. You and the relative wind are working together to get you and your student out of the aircraft stable. The student's going to try to do everything they can to make your job harder. The relative wind, if you use it, will do everything it can to help make your job easier. All right, hand cam exits. We got to talk about hand cam. There are a lot of hand cam instructors out there doing all the right things, but hand cam has some contributing factors to tandem exits that make our jobs harder than it needs to be. The first one is it takes away our focus on proper body position. We spent the first half an hour on this presentation talking about my right arm, right? Where should it be? Here. Where should my left arm be? Here. We all agree, right? What happens when we throw a hand cam on? This. Our left hand comes down over the shoulder of our student because we want to catch that shot. In doing so, we're putting our priorities as a photographer above our priorities as a tandem instructor. So again, self-evaluation, when you exit the aircraft, go back and look at some of your videos. Is your arm out in front of the student, or is your arm back here? And we can still catch the same shot with our hand turned. And if we're exiting with our left arm out here, we're creating a more challenging exit because we're removing the possibility of stability on our left side. We're actually inducing instability. Now, if we add to that, what happened to the guys that were afraid of exiting? Their right hand's on their hip because they want the drogue. Now we add a hand cam, their left hand is out in front. I call this the Superman exit. Okay, they now have their hand out in front and they have their other hand on their hip. Am I in a good position to exit stable? Not at all. So what's going to happen? What has to happen? If I have all that weight on my back of my rig, I have to roll over. And you will see this especially on 182 exits with hand cam. The turtle exit, where you roll over like a turtle on its back, then you have to get stable, roll back over again, and start skydiving. That's all induced by this Superman style exit that has no help in exiting stable. It's actually making it harder to exit stable. So hand cam, the bad body positions, increase unstable exits. And then last but not least, if I'm exiting an aircraft and the relative wind is this way, and I should be exiting into the relative wind, but I have a GoPro with the red light blinking on my left hand, where am I going to go? We go where we're looking. If I'm looking at that camera, I'm going to go to the camera. We have to understand that as tandem instructors, yes, hand cam is here. The technology will never be uninvented. It's going to be symbiotic on tandem skydives for as long as there's a tandem industry. But we have to remember its place. Its place is outside of our operational procedures as tandem instructors, whether it's exit, free fall, canopy flight, and landing. We need to turn the camera on and then forget it's there. If it catches the shot, great. If it doesn't, you'll have better exits with your hands here than your hands here. And the better exit is what the student's paying for, not the better shot. Jumpsuits make our jobs easier. The more drag we have, the easier it's going to be for us to exit stable. And you guys ever jump in shorts and t-shirts here in the UK? That 3 days a year where it's actually warm? I live in Florida where it's warm year-round, so we struggle with wearing jumpsuits because you get hot and sweaty and they're just not a lot of fun to wear when it's really hot out and the sun's shining. But what jumpsuits provide is drag. Fabric provides drag, friction, and that friction provides power. The more drag we have, the more power we have. Who should have more drag then? If your student has a jumpsuit on and you have a jumpsuit on, who should be wearing the bigger jumpsuit? It should be the instructor. Now, if you're presented with a student that has a larger jumpsuit on before you board the aircraft, can you stop and change that situation before you board the airplane? Or do you have to jump with the jumpsuits that you have and then sort it out after you exit? Which is the better decision? Stop on the ground, fix it before you get in the aircraft, make that decision before you exit, because it's a lot easier to deal with the tandem student when they have a tight jumpsuit and you have a larger jumpsuit on. And arms versus legs. My legs are longer than my arms, as I think most of us are built that way, right? So therefore, my legs have more drag than my arms. If I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, my legs are stronger than my arms. So if I wanted to put more drag somewhere, if I were to jump like this, if I were to go skydiving right now with a short sleeve shirt on and pants, am I making my job harder or easier to exit stable, head high into the relative wind? Harder. Why? My legs have drag and have power, my arms do not, and it wants to flip over. So if I exited like this and I had a bad exit, I'd land and go, you know what? I did everything I was supposed to do and I still flipped over. But there's a reason why. It's not a mystery. With all the drag on my legs and no drag on my arms, I have to rotate over. So in those warm days, when you're in shorts and t-shirts, it is better to have shorts on, reducing drag on your legs, and long sleeve shirts or sweatshirts on your arms. The more drag you have on your arms, the easier it's going to be to control your center of gravity. The goal of any tandem jump, any tandem exit, is to keep our hips to our head on the top half of our body, meaning we exit an aircraft head high, hips head high, neutral into the relative wind. If we're diving out of a tailgate or out of a 182, the goal is to dive out of the plane and end up in that same head high orientation. So the goal should always be head up, feet down, stable as we're setting the drogue. That can be easier accomplished with more drag in total and more drag on our arms versus drag on our legs. So last topic here just to cover is the different aircraft exit techniques. There's varied techniques for different aircraft. For 182, old school instructors used to exit poised off the step. We realize that's not a great way to exit today because mostly what we're seeing in today's 182s is the doors have handles, and when the door goes up in flight, that handle wants to bang on the reserve pack tray, so none of us are really keen on putting our reserves up into the door. So the easiest way to exit a 182 if we're not going to do a poised exit is to actually dive towards the tail. A 182 exit should be treated almost identical to a Skyvan or tailgate exit. Any of you guys jump tailgates? Skyvans, Casas? The exit for a tailgate aircraft is to dive out with our arms out in front of us, catching air, and putting our feet up on our butt so that if our legs are extended, we're going to blow over. We have to flip over if our legs are out. So we keep our legs back on our butt, our arms are out in front, and we're staring at the horizon the whole time. We transition down that hill, and we set the drogue stable. A 182 is a slower version of that. They'd have a slower exit speed, but the same principle works. Diving towards the tail with our arms out. It's a lot of work to get out on the step, but once you do it, you make your job after you exit the aircraft what? Easier. So we work harder inside the aircraft and on the aircraft to work easier after we've left the aircraft. King Airs are a very high-speed exit. The problem with the King Air is it's a very small aperture. It's a very small doorway to get out, and a lot of those big guys out there have a difficult time passing through that tiny door. It's almost like a magic trick. Just takes time and practice in terms of being able to get comfortable with exiting. But once we've exited a King Air, where's the relative wind coming? Right. So can we rotate out the door? Absolutely. Without energy, without pushing off, without generating additional energy, we can simply clear that small doorway, clear that aperture as we're stepping off the diamond plate there, and just rotate our body and drop off into the relative wind. Head high, arms up, happy days. Same exit concept for twin otters and caravans. Caravans, we tend to sit on the floor and roll 90 degrees. Twin otters, we tend to have the ability to stand up or squat in the door. Either way, exiting 90 degrees from a side door aircraft. And again, Skyvan and Cessna, diving towards the tail because there's no other option in a Skyvan. Arms out, extended, looking at the horizon. Why do we look at the horizon? We go where we look. If we look down at the ground, where are we going to go? We're going to go down to the ground. It's one of the tips or tricks of tailgate exits. It should strain your neck and it should strain your eyes to keep looking at the horizon. As your body wants to go over, if you keep looking at the horizon, where will you go? Towards the horizon, not flip over. So in conclusion, we've been able to break down a bad exit, show all the fundamental flaws of the exit, remove any mystery behind what's causing it. Would you guys agree up till this point? Am I making an accurate statement? Bad exits aren't mysterious, they don't just happen. Certain things have to occur. Bad student body position, bad instructor body position, and opposing relative wind exits. And when you put those together, you have to have a bad exit. That's the logical outcome of a series of illogical acts and decisions. You agree? Okay. So with that said, we can ensure good exits, we can build better exits with proper training, proper setup in the door, a good launch into the relative wind, removing the fear, and flying our body. I should put a big asterisk next to this, just to remind you at the end of this that we are tandem skydivers. Tandem means two people. What does skydiver mean? It means we skydive. We exit an aircraft and we fly our body. So if you use all of those principles and you evaluate yourselves, and I really hope you do. You've taken the time to come here and sit with me for 45 minutes. I hope you take the time to go back tonight and tomorrow and look at your exits. Ask yourself, are these exits that would have passed my course? And if not, if they're not stable and into the relative wind head high, ask yourself, what can I do to fix it? That's my presentation on bad exits, how to build a better exit. Most importantly, never stop learning. That's the goal. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I've only got about 4 minutes here, so I'll scram because there's another presentation coming. Are you done? Nope. Well, there's nobody here, so we can answer any questions now until the next people show up. I thank you for your time and hope it was worth your while.